there, but committee members are actually appointed by a combination of state and federal governments. And we comprise usually about 10 members drawn from across the community. And we operate in two modes, really. One is to produce a roadmap, which is designed to look at the major strategic issues for the region and work with, as it were, the local council, key stakeholders, to come up with what are the major issues that, in particular, the federal and state governments should be taking into account when they're planning and perhaps responding to local initiatives. So if we could go to the next one. Well, that really covers more or less the various roles, of course, and I should have added that the second role is why we're here today, and that is that the RDA committees look at the expressions of interest in the RDA grant. So there's about $1 billion out there over the period. Looks at the expressions of interest produced by organisations within their patch, rank orders those, and rounds 3, I'm probably skipping through what's already going to be up there. There's 5. We will be looking at proposals, expressions of interest, and rank ordering the first 5 of those. And in round 4, we'll be rank ordering just 3. They go forward to the federal government. And so in that context, the RDA committee suddenly switch into, as it were, granting bodies in that context of actually looking at the applications and acting as a kind of gate through which these go forward to the federal government. And we'll be discussing the granting process a bit more fully. Just to give you a very brief snapshot, as I mentioned before, we produce a roadmap, as they call it, strategic document, which the most recent one is a 20-year document, or thereabouts, 2012 to 31, you could argue that's 19 years. But so they're long-range documents. And if we could keep rolling. Okay, so there are 4 major areas in the document that we've produced this year. So we've called them focus areas. In round 3, you don't have to try and specifically address these focus areas. In round 4, you have to actually relate to one of these major areas in the RDA roadmap. So we'll come back to that. But the focus area here is to, as it says, nurture high potential economic development sectors for the region. So we think that's really important. That's what's come back with discussions with our stakeholders. And so there are a couple of examples of major areas such as the health sector area. Another one is in the food area, agribusiness, supply chain issues, sort of, local connectivity between producers and markets. So they are 2 examples of a high potential area we think there are. Focus area 2 is advocate for infrastructure for the region, and you can see a number of examples there, whether it's the Bruce Highway upgrade or the Sunshine Coast Airport. That's another role for RDA, which is focused around infrastructure issues. The federal government spends a huge amount of money on infrastructure, usually almost always partnered up with other monies from state government, for example, to build roads, rail, whatever. And they increasingly want to have joined up projects that actually are not just someone's sort of preferred railway line to somewhere, but actually stacks up with an economic study that tries to produce a business plan that actually makes sense. So the next area is, we've described this area, it's really around the digital futures agenda. So we think that the digital economy for the Sunshine Coast is a key component of broadening, developing the economy on the Sunshine Coast. We're not just talking next year, we're talking about the next several decades. So we advocate that the development of the digital economy here, in the broadest sense, whether that's through telemedicine, developments that relate to the health sector, teleworking, for example, or other projects that just enable small business to take up broadband activities, develop a web presence, do business on the internet, as it were. That's key aspects of developing the Sunshine Coast, and tied to that is a smart communities agenda. So around the university, for example, as a knowledge worker hub, and also around the new university hospital. Sunshine Coast has already in place, or coming into place, significant components of what would be a advanced technology, smart community agenda. And the fourth one is around workforce and employment issues. On the Sunshine Coast, if you look at the jobs which are available, frankly, there's some holes in the profile, and they are in the area of sort of white-collar jobs, this emerging new economy, digital economy and such like. In the health sector, there's a major job expansion that will occur around the new university hospital, for example. But trying to do some workforce planning, looking at here, for example, in the area of mining. It turns out that we think there's between maybe 5,000 and 10,000 people living on the Sunshine Coast who are actually driving and maybe flying to mining sites around Queensland and across Australia. That's been going up almost exponentially. We saw data that the Mining Council put out that suggested only 500 people were doing that, and that was probably, what, 2 years ago? Mm-hmm. Well, as I say, we think there's at least 5,000, maybe 10,000 now from this region who are driving or flying to jobs in that mining sector, for example, and that's suddenly exploded. And finally, just to conclude, we have in our roadmap some pretty useful documentation about what we call the state of the region. It's a look forward, a look at trends. Sunshine Coast will continue to grow rapidly, in fact ahead of trend for Queensland as a whole. So there'll be significant expansion of population over a 20-year period. You need to find jobs for people in that context, all driving to Brisbane or not having a job here at all. And that sort of data behind you, that's the sort of thing you need for doing long-range planning. So anyhow, it gives you a bit of a context for our work. And on that point, I'll sit down and let Russell take over.
Sorry, Max, I'll just get the technology back. I will try to use the microphone because we do have people on the live stream, and having a bit of amplification helps with the system. And also, as we're recording this particular session on the live streaming, we'll be able to put this on our website on Monday or Tuesday next week, so that the people who weren't able to either watch this live, attend today, or and want to watch it again will be able to do so. So what I'll go through is more the official presentation that is a standardised presentation that's been presented to communities across Australia by the 55 RDAs from across Australia. So I'll just give you a bit of background here. This particular fund is part of a $4.3 billion commitment to regional Australia. This was part of the agreement made between the Independents and the Gillard government early on in the creation of the current Australian government. This particular fund, the RDA Fund, is $1 billion over 6 years. We're up to rounds 3 and 4. Once these 2 rounds have been completed, that'll be close to just over $500 million will have been expended as part of the total program. The funds that in this particular project is infrastructure, and it's predominantly capital that we're talking about for any of the grant applications that we're looking for. They're aimed at meeting community needs, and they're looking to deliver a diverse set of opportunities for regions from an economic benefit perspective, an environmental benefit, and also a social benefit. The other side to these funds, and we'll go into this and you'll see a little bit more data on this a little bit through the presentation, is a lot of it's about leveraging funding. So it's about, yes, the Commonwealth is prepared if the grant is a really strong grant to put money in, but it is really looking for other organisations to also put money into the fund too. So it's not just a Commonwealth only, although that is not mandatory, but it's certainly one of the strong points that any grant application will be assessed on is the other leveraging opportunities in the actual grant. Round 2 and 1 were completed, and as you may or may not know, the Mullaney Community Centre was successful in round 1 on the Sunshine Coast. We didn't receive any grants in round 2. The Mullaney, if you've been up there recently and had a look, it was about just under $1.8 million that was granted under that particular program, and it's almost complete, so well, it'll be complete early next year, so it's well and truly underway. So hopefully in either round 3 or round 4, the Sunshine Coast will have a successful grant. There is no guarantee in this process. So round 3, going into the detail on it, for those that are interested, it's between $50,000 and $500,000. The EOI process, as you well know, is now open and closes on Thursday, the 6th of December at 5 p.m. our time, so Queensland time. Specifically, it's aimed at supporting small towns with a population of 30,000 or less. Now, I've had a number of telephone conversations, had a number of questions to me about how do you define the 30,000. I've actually sent an email into the email centre in the department and asked that question as well. The answer is not cut and dry. What it is that you would need to provide your own research that clearly shows that a particular town has 30,000 or less people that you're applying for, that this is relevant to, and that would then be verified by the Department of Regional Australia. So if you want to really go into any detail and you're not sure in this space, then the really thing to do would be to ring the department itself or to email them, and I'll leave the contact details on this a little bit later on. The other thing that we need to look at in this space is there really are 2 types of organisations, and then this is both round 3 and round 4 that are actually eligible in this space, and that is the council, and in our case the Sunshine Coast Council. Most RDAs have multiple councils in their area. You know, some have upwards of 40 odd councils in their area. We happen to only have 1. But councils are done, so from our case, Sunshine Coast Council. The other eligible type of organisation are not-for-profit organisations. And in this case, one of the key hurdles for not-for-profit organisations in the round 3, so the smaller grant program, is they must have an annual income or turnover of $500,000 a year over the last 2 years, and that must be auditable, and you must be able to demonstrate that. So it's if you like, in a not-for-profit organisation, we're not talking the small not-for-profits or the small clubs, we're talking not-for-profits that actually do have a significant income level. The preference for all projects in this space is for partner contributions, as I mentioned earlier. In-kind is acceptable, but as stated, and you'll see it in the guidelines themselves, the preference is for cash contributions. That in-kind is obviously in there as well. And again, there's a preference for projects in this space. It's not mandatory. So if you are interested in round 3, it isn't mandatory, but if you're looking for a successful project, then you would be looking wherever possible to find co-contributors to the project itself. In this particular round 3, as the RDA process, or as the EOI process completes, RDA Sunshine Coast will actually be assessing all of the project EOIs that come in and will select the top 5. We will, however, rate every project and every EOI that we get in, and for those that are successful as well as those that are unsuccessful, we'll be able to provide feedback to you as to why and the wherefores and where the committee was in choosing the top 5 and where yours came in that space. So that process will happen once the actual announcement has been made about which are the top 5 that go through to the full application stage. Okay, round 4, as you see, it's a much larger fund, and the actual grant amounts are much larger, from 500 to 15 million. This is very similar to round 2 for any of you that were involved in that process. Round 2 is in that space. Again, the EOIs for this close on the 6th of December, 5 o'clock our time. In this case, it's supporting regional infrastructure, so not just the local infrastructure or town infrastructure, but it's certainly regional in focus. And as Max alluded to in this space, it's not just regional infrastructure. In this project, you must show why and how the particular project is in line with the RDA regional roadmap. So you need to be able to map quite clearly where this project actually assists or meets the priorities or the focus areas as listed in the Sunshine Coast Regional Roadmap. The income threshold in this one is $1 million as well. So those of you that were aware in round 2, the income threshold was 1.5 million. So it has been reduced somewhat in this space to give slightly smaller organisations or ones that didn't quite meet the income threshold an opportunity in this. Again, strong preference, not mandatory, strong preference is given to projects that have partner contributions. So again, it's about partner contributions. Cash is very important in this process and it is given a high ranking, but again, it is not mandatory. In this case, the RDA committees will only choose 3, so the top 3 projects to go forward to a full application stage. As you can imagine, when you go to full application stage, it's a very arduous job pulling together all the documentation. So we really only want to have the top 3 chances in this space going forward. So this is the information that's been provided us to provide to yourselves, if you like. Leverage funds from the government, so state government, private sector, philanthropists, business and community groups. The most successful ones, and there's a couple of case studies towards the end of this presentation, the most successful packages were ones where there were a collaborative effort. They weren't just a single organisation with maybe a couple of others on that. They were actually collaborative efforts with large community support and demonstrable community support. So not just, you know, we did a session with a community group once and they thought it was good. It was, you know, ongoing community support that was still there and it was shown to be there through letters of support, through documentation and through other information. Also, it was about support from other organisations, and private is as well as public, as well as you know, not-for-profit. All of the above are important in this space. The processes, you know, again, we're looking at new ideas for old problems. Think strategically, think innovatively, creatively. Those are the projects that are the ones that we're looking for, and those are the ones particularly that the government is looking for in this space. And one of the things you need to be aware as well is that it's a compelling case, and when you're putting the EOI together, be aware that in a number of places we're not looking for a long document. We don't want to read reams and reams. In fact, we've been specifically told 350 words where it says that. Anything more than that, we're not allowed to actually read. So very specific. Where it says only short and concise, absolutely only short and concise. So we really want to be specific in that space. Make a very compelling case in a very short amount of words. So where it is a round 4 project, it should have regional reach, and I'll show you some examples a little bit later. So beyond the actual town or regional area, where it actually extends outside of this particular RDA area. So it's offering benefits not just to a local community in one location, it's offering multiple benefits to multiple communities. And as we mentioned, it addresses the priorities in our regional roadmap, but also in any other plans that you have. You know, the Sunshine Coast Council's community plan, any other documentation you have that's a published document. Read the guidelines, read the frequently asked questions, and ask questions. If you have any questions, ask us. If we can't answer, then we'll ask the Department of Regional Australia. But try to make sure that if you have any questions whatsoever, they're answered before we go into this process and the EOI closes. In relation to talking about this particular process, you know, the RDA committee, myself, Max and others, we can give you guidelines about eligibility. We can give you where, you know, the document says very clearly. But what we can do, and if you have any questions, because it relates back to the regional roadmap, if you want to know why and where falls behind the regional roadmap, ask us as many questions as you like. You know, that information we can give you at any point in time that may assist you in putting together your EOI. So, and when you're looking through the eligibility criteria, make sure you try to tick off every single box. Now, one of the difference between this round and the last round is you won't be penalised if you don't incorporate all the documentation along the way. However, when the project is being assessed by the department down the track, if you get to that stage, they will mark down a particular project if all the documentation isn't there. So in the past, for example, ineligibility meant automatic disqualification. This time around, it may just mean the project doesn't quite get a higher priority in certain sectors, but it still may get through the process. So that's information that you need to know. So from the round 2, which was the most recent one, and some of the key learnings that came out of that, and these are the key things that a lot of the successful applicants learned from, was community buy-in, as I mentioned before, partnership funding, maximise leverage. And this is a number, if you get a chance and you go to the website for, say, Simon Crean in his speeches, you will note on many occasions he talks about the fact that the government is investing $200 million in the grants but getting $800 million in projects. So for every dollar the government's investing, there's another $3 coming from other organisations in various formats and cash and so forth. So wherever possible, think about your project in that context. Successful projects leverage funds from state, local and other organisations. So again, if your project is only a single organisation, think about what other organisations out there that would also benefit that might be prepared to participate, be it financially or in kind, because they'll also benefit from the projects. So make sure those are there. So these are, one of the key lessons are in there. Regional reach. Make sure that you demonstrate very clearly not just the benefits of your project to your local community or to the local region, but how that's actually going to benefit the regions around you, the state, and perhaps the country, if it is of that sort of level of significance. And obviously, one of the key issues in our regional roadmap is employment. Be really specific about the employment opportunities created in the construction and ongoing operation of the project that you're talking about, and really think about how that's going to affect locally in this space. Another really key learning that Minister Crean has been really putting in place is persistence pays. 23 of the 46 projects founded in round 2 were unsuccessful in round 1. What happened was they got detailed feedback from the government, went back, rethought the project, addressed those critical issues, came back, and the second time round they were successful. So in this case, persistence pays, but what doesn't pay in this case is getting the same project out, dusting it off and resubmitting it. You really need to think about the feedback you've received and making sure you take that feedback and on board and make the changes as per the ideas that came through to you. This is one of the case studies that has been put forward as one that got up that ticks a number of the boxes. This is regional development Australia. Quite often, to actually get a project in a capital city, there are a number of other hurdles in place. We don't have those hurdles here, but what this is demonstrating is that this particular project had regional reach. Although the actual location of the village to look after the leukemia sufferers was located in Adelaide, it was actually looking after families from a number of different states who could actually come and stay. Rather than doing trips to visit for treatment continuously, they could actually come and stay in a village, and so it had a regional reach, so it covered a number of states in Australia and it looked after people in those states. There was also a real community benefit in this, in that treatment that these people can actually have in their local area, and they can actually go and stay in a place that was set up for them. And it actually created a community within this village. So this is actually being constructed now. There was also many organisations involved. This wasn't just a single organisation putting forward an idea. There were numerous organisations involved offering cash, in-kind and other kinds of support. Gesundheit. Jobs. They were very clearly able to articulate the jobs, not just in the construction, but ongoing. And they were also able to very clearly demonstrate that there was really strong community support in the location of the village, but also within the people who suffered this particular disease. So again, a really important project. These are just an example to look at when you're actually thinking about your project. One just the south of us, North Lakes, which is under construction now. Persistence again is in this place. The Moreton Bay Council submitted this in conjunction with a number of organisations. They were unsuccessful in round one, got the feedback from round one, reworked the project, rethought the project, remodelled the project, and went back out again and set in round two. They were successful. They really looked at what the new civic centre was actually going for, and they actually turned it around and looked at how it was supporting the region. And, you know, very similar to us in the growth concept, Moreton Bay, you know. In fact, in certain places, you know, they've got a similar sort of growth profile. They also had issues with community benefit issues. You know, they have a socio-economic mix that was looking for this sort of facility, and they were able to demonstrate that. They were also able to demonstrate how this particular project was a catalytic centre for economic impact for the surrounding area. And obviously social inclusion is a key part of this particular project. Again, they were very clear. They took the feedback, they came back and actually remodelled it. So our role, as in the RDA committees, as Max has said, is to assess the projects that come in with the closure date on the 6th of December, to actually make sure that they address the criteria that are in there, and the RDA committee will assess each ELI based on a set of standardised criteria, and those criteria are available to you in the guidelines. So when you're actually filling in a grant application, those guidelines will show you very clearly what we're assessing your project on. So you'll know in writing the document, you know, how well it fits into each one of those categories. So please make sure you tailor that EOI to meet the information within the guidelines. In relation to the probity side, again, we're unable to give you anything in relation to the project itself, but more than happy to give you information in relation to the regional roadmap or information that supports data sets, things like that. And I'm happy to provide that information. I just can't provide any information on the project itself. Just got a few numbers now, and then if you have any questions, we can go into that stage. Just gives you round one, so the sort of scope that people were expecting in this space. So 553 applications in round one, and they were seeking $2.05 billion in funding, you know, with a total expected end project amount of $5.5 billion. Now, remembering the fund itself over the entire period of 6 years is only $1 billion. You can imagine that there was a little bit of questioning done after that round. 35 projects actually received 150 million. So you can see in that particular round, there was an enormous amount of competition, and you were very lucky. In fact, you know, you're looking at, you know, roughly 1 in 15 chance of actually receiving any funding. You know, which says a lot for the Maloney Community Centre, which was one of those 35 projects that was successful in round one. In round two, I'll just give you another quick stat. It's a roughly 350 applications that were put in, and some of these applications were over 1,000 pages long. Nearly 350 were actually ineligible because they actually missed out on a number of the criteria in there. So there's a lot of, an awful lot of work, and it was recognised very early on in the piece that there was a big ask for all these organisations to put these applications in. Therefore, round two came along and the process changed to an EOI process, which is quite simple, and really we're looking for a document which is on our website, which is 3 to 5 pages long. We don't want any supporting documentation. In fact, we can't accept any supporting documentation. For you to fill that in, we'll assess that. If that is then deemed to be a high priority project for the region, then you go through the pain and process of putting in the full application. So in round two, $200 million worth of grants, between 515 million, 459 EOIs received, 162 projects were actually selected by the RDA across the country to actually proceed to the full application, and 46 projects were funded. Of the 162 projects that were selected by RDA committees to go to full application, only 152 actually elected to go to full application. So in this case, you can see you almost had a 1 in 3 chance of actually being successful once you've been selected in that high priority area. So now that if you do make it into the high priority or the priority 1, 2, 3 or 1 to 5 in round 3, then there is a good, a solid chance that your project has an ability to be successful. I'm just going to put this up there and just let you know this presentation will be available on our website early next week, so if you want to have a look at it again you can, as will the presentation that Max made, along with the data behind that as well. So there's a number of graphs showing the growth of the region, showing the population change, and all the details that Max was talking about earlier regarding the change in the region. So this is sort of some of the detail behind what we just talked about a moment ago, giving you an idea of the quantum of the projects. And this gives you a breakdown on a state-by-state basis. And as you can see, it is spread across the country. Generally, the first level is looking at the population base of the area, and the funding is then pushed in roughly in that population base on a state level. But then when it gets down to the state level, then the projects are very much prioritised on the value of the project to the region. You can see there's a fair bit of money going to New South Wales, but that is where the highest population base is in the country. So that's probably all the information on round 3 and 4 now, and where we've got this standardised presentation. The next round, round 5, and that's been very clear, is it will support larger strategic infrastructure projects in the regions. So, you know, that round 3, if you like, this is the first time that we've had a small project round. This seems to be, at this point in time, that's been testing to see what's going to happen there, so it certainly won't be happening again in the next round. Okay, so that's the end of that particular project, that presentation, and takes us to any questions that anybody might have. So if anybody has anything, that would be great. Friday afternoon, I can understand that. Oh, so Sam, sorry.
Hello, is it possible to have a look at the remaining successful application?
We don't have that documentation, and we haven't been supplied any of that. However, if you did go and speak to the people in Maleny, Helen, the lady that ran that process, is very open in supporting people and providing you with that information. But that's not for us to provide to you, but I know she's been very open in other organisations. Sorry.
Sorry, can the grant be used to support social infrastructure for like a social enterprise?
Again, I can't comment on a particular project, but if the project's been put forward by a not-for-profit organisation and it meets the guidelines as described, the fact that it's a social enterprise is really irrelevant, as long as we're talking about infrastructure in this space.
Community capital infrastructure, what do you exactly mean?
I mean, it's buildings. You know, it is infrastructure. It's like what we're in at the moment. It's not software. It's not, you know, services. It's not people's wages in a service-based. Well, it's very much infrastructure.
Just earlier when we were chatting, you made mention about potential focus on arts and culture. Could you expand on that?
Yes, certainly. In the program, and this is something that Minister Crean's put forward, is that he's very keen that some of the infrastructure projects within rounds 3 and 4 focus on arts and culture. In fact, he's even set a benchmark that he's looking for about $40 million of the total rounds 3 and 4 being utilised in arts and culture-based projects. And in fact, if you review some of the work, some of the speeches and some of the locations he's been recently, he uses the revamping of the centre of Newcastle as one of his examples, and in fact has recently provided them with a grant to put on a conference next year where the theme is how they've used the infrastructure grants to actually change Newcastle for the better.
Russell, just follow on from that, but there doesn't seem to be a lot of discussion in the roadmap of arts and culture.
No, the roadmap we have doesn't particularly look at arts and culture, but an arts and cultural project, if you look at the roadmap, it does look at employment generation, it does look at the digital future, and in both of those areas there is certainly a sub-theme that would be arts and culture related, and there's certainly community in social inclusion projects in our regional roadmap in that space as well. So I think it's a question of understanding the roadmap and some of the background to it as well. I think our roadmap it does give some very specific focus areas, and focus area 1, which looks at supporting economic development areas, certainly would get down into that level as well. And I'm thinking a convention centre side of area would certainly fit in that space too. Sorry, Anne? Yes?
Yeah, I'm curious, you gave us success rate, i.e. the millennium one. Are you able to provide further background as to how many applications came from Sunshine Coast region in rounds 1 and 2?
Yes, certainly. In round 1 we had, I think, 13 applications, and in round 2 we had 9 applications. So I think that's on the record you can actually go into the department's website as well, and you can actually have a look at the organisations who actually applied as well. So it'll show you who applied to, so there is actually a link on the website that goes down to who applied. Not what the project was or so forth, but the organisation details are there as well.
So it's that, if for example you've got an idea of a potential project and you're not sure if it's been put up before by other organisations, are you able to disclose what they were if you were to put that query into you?
We are not. You would have to actually go to the email address, which is rdaf@regional.gov.au, and put a request in. Or you could actually, if you had a look at the list of names of organisations that have applied in the past, just give them a ring. As I suggested, the Mulaney Centre, although we don't have that information, they have been very open in sharing that information with organisations that have asked them. Yes?
Question about the in-kind support. I've read somewhere land can be considered as in-kind support.
It depends on the program and what the land's actually classified as. A number of organisations may partner up with a state government or a local government organisation, and that might be their support in that space, and in that case that would certainly be considered in-kind support. However, if it's leased land or something, then you're in a different situation. But yes, land can be considered part of the process, because you can't build something unless you've got somewhere to put it. Does anybody else have anything else? Right, look, thank you very much for coming here on a Friday afternoon late, and we've managed to do it in 3/4 of an hour, so we've done very well. And if anybody does have any questions that are generic in nature and regarding the application, please contact me, or you want any more information about our regional roadmap, please contact me. And any questions that do come forward or any information that's relevant, we will put up on our website as well. So we'll put up the 2 presentations from today, we'll put up the video from today, and any relevant questions that come through and any answers that I get, I'll be able to put up on our website as well in a sort of a blog style scenario, so if anybody's interested. So those of you that haven't been there, it is here. Oh look, that's us live, just so you know. And just go to the website, and we have a section on here in our regional priorities for the RDA Fund, and I'll be putting all the information into that RDA Fund area, so and just taking it through to that particular process. So I'll put as much information as I can up on this website and try to keep everybody informed. So thank you very much for coming, and I hope you have a great weekend.